Hello, welcome to Flory Models. I'm Philip Flory. Well, this is probably the biggest kit we're going to be doing, certainly for bulk and size anyway. This is the Trumpeter 1/32 scale F-14 Tomcat. This is the D version. This particular kit, you can get the A version, the older version, the B, which those are the Bombcat, and then obviously the D. When you're putting this one up against it, obviously the main one you're going to talk about is the sort of Tamiya one. Now the Tamiya one has got a few problems where it's been upgraded over the years, and to be honest it's quite an old kit in the first place. It's got a mix of raised and recessed panel lines. The old part, which tends to be the body, is raised panel lines. Okay, the front end is recessed. Now, you know, I don't think anybody particularly likes raised panel lines these days with modern recessed panel lines and riveting detail. But certainly it's a real pain when you have to go round and rescribe and everything else, and the kit itself still isn't that cheap. That saying, this kit as well isn't cheap. I know we covered a lot of this if you saw it in the news show when we reviewed the kit a few months ago, but to put this into perspective, this kit here, retail prices this is £126 for any of the variants. Okay, now if you wanted to, you could obviously go around and do all the goodies, the aftermarket bits like we normally do. So we are talking, I've got a quick rundown of all the things here. So you've got £25 will get you the Aries cockpit for the inside of this if you wanted to do it. You've got the nozzles, the actual nice detailed nozzles at the back, which are very nice. They're £25. Photo etch set is coming out probably by the time you see this. It's not actually out at the moment. I am waiting for it, hence the delay on this one, so hopefully it will be out by the time I get to it. But certainly it is going to be around about £20 for the exterior photo etch set. There are photo etch sets coming out from Edar which are going to cover the cockpit, instruments, harnesses, seats, things like that as well. So they are on the line, but they're not out yet. Wheels you can get for this one, obviously weighted wheels, things like that, resin wheels, they're going to be about sort of £7 to £10 each. G-Factor do the undercarriage for this. Now if you haven't seen G-Factor stuff before, it's very nicely detailed, sort of looks like copper or brass undercarriage. Very, very strong, but unfortunately you do pay a price for it, and that's almost £40 for that set. So by the time you total all those up with the kit, you are looking at a kit that's over £200 to build. Anyway, this particular one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be having this as an in-flight display, our first proper in-flight display. Two reasons for this. First of all is I would have nowhere to put it because it is never going to fit any of my display cabinets. Okay, so the way I look at it is if I've got it in an in-flight display, I can angle it up, which means it's more likely to fit on a shelf. I can have the wings folded back, obviously the gear up and everything else like that. So that really help out with those particular things. And secondly, it will keep the cost down of the kit because I'm not going to have to add all the aftermarket stuff, because I know in other builds, if you look at the Sufa in that, we spent well over £200 doing that one, but it does make it very expensive. But because we're going to have the cockpit closed on this one, so you're not going to be able to see it in there by the time we've got the pilots in, it's not really worth putting in an aftermarket cockpit. Certainly, you know, things like obviously gear, wheel wells, things like that. Nozzles, again, we're not going to need, because that's how I'm going to actually attach the aircraft to the in-flight display. I'm going to have acrylic rods coming out of the nozzles out the back, so you're not going to see the detail on the inside because obviously that's going to be full up with acrylic. So that is the thing with it. So what we'll do, we'll have a quick run through of the kit. If you haven't seen this kit before, the first thing obviously you notice, it's in a lovely sturdy box. You've got a carrier handle, you've got these release tabs all round it to get in. It's not the type of kit where you can just throw yourself in. So what we'll do, we'll just hoof it up here. So then this is what you're going to get inside the box. As you can see, it's quite a mammoth thing. Decals, there's a nice replacement decal there as well, because obviously I haven't got the left hand side, they've printed them incorrectly, but again, very comprehensive of all the decaling. I think you've got 3 markings if I'm right in here. You've got 2 low vis and 1 cag bird as well for this one. You've got your instructions, and as you imagine when we've gone through these before, pretty basic. There's nothing that I've looked at this and thought, you know, that's going to be a problem. Nice little things. Obviously we've got detailed engine that we can work with, but as you see, you can have the radome open, which is a lovely little touch. So if you did want to take this one to town and spend all the money on the aftermarket, you could really make this a very, very nice kit. But as you said, it's pretty much standard as we all go through. Just a few things, as I said, it's a shame like the engine that we're never going to see it, and as I say, the radome and things like that. But that said, we're still going to make a very impressive thing, and I think with the Tomcat in flight, really should come to life. These are the markings that come with the kit. Obviously there's lots of aftermarket guys around. So we've got 2 cag birds. Obviously we've got the, I've got to think who they are now. This is the Tomcatters and the Bounty Hunters for each one, so you can see down there like that. Very nice. I must admit, I am torn. I did say I'll do the Bounty Hunters because it's an old sort of thing going back to my childhood. One of the first kits I ever built was the Matchbox 1/72 scale Tomcat, which I happened to do in the old 1970s colours as the Bounty Hunters. That's why I'm saying I'll do it again. But I do like the Tomcatters. And then on the other side, I think we've got here the Lions as well. Let's say one of their low-vis birds, which would be nice to do quite weathered and dirty. The kit itself, as you can see, it is quite a strange thing. You've got things like this, which this actually is the main fuselage section, which this will give you a sort of insight into how it actually is, because you've got your top half just like this, and then this shows you how much work you need to do. You've got the underside, which is pretty, you know, holy. It's just the way that it's actually moulded. It's very hard to injection mould curved surfaces or multiple curved surfaces and things like that. So the easiest way to do is to break it down. Hence, whilst most aircraft you get in kit form have this type of effect at the bottom when you've got this sort of double gull wing going on, things like that. So we have that, and then as you imagine, as you work through, so I'm not going to go through these specs again, we've got the front fuselage sections, we've got the engines, and so they're lovely detailed, shame you won't see them. We have tail planes, okay, and then obviously down in here we've got various wings and weapons and everything else like that. The only nice thing here, we've got this box, which is a very nice touch, and in here we've got clear part for the glass work, okay, one piece nose, okay, which is very nice. And then we have, in here we have the intakes, which I think we've already got one open, which we do. Again, the way they're moulded, which means you haven't got actually ejector pin mark holding these in, but it's got the riveting detail going all the way around and everything else. So it's quite a complex surface. A few ejector pin marks all over the kit, to be honest, I'm not going to lie about it. More clear parts. Rubber wheels, I know you get a lot of people and either they love or hate rubber wheels. Rubber wheels, easy to paint, put them on, scuff them up, give them a little bit of weathering like that, you're ready to go. You do get people who say, oh, they fall apart over years to come and everything else. I've been doing this now for 15 years with rubber wheels and things, and I've still never seen a set fall apart, but people tell me they do. Okay, metal inserts. You might be thinking what these rods are for. These are metal inserts which are actually going to go into the centre of the undercarriage to take a lot of the weight, because this is going to be quite a heavy kit, especially if you're adding resin to it. Hence, whilst G-Factor do their undercarriage as well. If it's plastic, over time you might notice it dulls down and starts to sag a little bit. Undercarriage, ejector seats. Obviously the D has a different version of ejector seats to the early ones. I'm not going to embarrass myself and try and pretend I know. I think it's CJ7 or something like that. And that's it. But the kit itself, when you do look at it, is pretty straightforward. We do have down in here, we can see these, which do tend to be a lot of bags full of stuff, but some of this, to be honest, isn't going to actually be anything to us, because this is all undercarriage. We're not going to need any of that, and things like that, and radome and detailing. So hopefully we'll be able to do a very nice job and do this very nicely weathered. It's a big kit, so we can play with certain techniques of weathering that you don't get away with on 148, certainly 172nd, but we can actually do it like the real thing, like corrosion control, where it's resprayed round. I intend to do a lot of that on this one and give this bird a really dirty look. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get all this cleared away, make plenty of space and everything, and then we can get on. Okay, so here we go with the build. So as ever, good references are essential, and one particular one I do like is the Daco Productions one. Now, we used this one before on other builds as well, but as I said, when you go through the actual quality of the photos is absolutely superb. So again, we'll be using this one right the way through, and it's not just like all the details, things like that, but you can pick up, say, some great little weathering. When you see the close up here, you can see the details are great, but just overall things like this type of weathering pattern and that, it's nice to get references where you can look at, but as I say, loads of photos right the way through there. So we will be using that particular one on there. So to start with, as we can imagine, it's the cockpit. Now, I said before, we're not going to town with this one. Normally we would pile in with resin and electrics and lighting and everything else. Straightforward this one, so in some ways it's quite a refreshing change to get on with the actual build. So what we've done, we've got them all laid out, as you can see here, as they come off the sprue, because they all look the same. So by cutting them off the sprue and laying them out as the cockpit is, so if you orientate the cockpit that way, that's how it goes together. What we're going to do with this one is actually spray it in whole sections and then pick out details. Now we're not going to put in the little things like handles and cabling and stuff like that for the moment. We're going to put a few of those in afterwards, certainly along with the seats and things like that. So just for the moment we are popping some of the essentials in. So we're just going to put some of these panels in using little bits of extra thin, just to pop those in. Now just when you're going around, make sure you've got the right bits in the right area. I cut them out and laid them down here so I could pile in like this and get on with it. But as you see, it does all go in quite nicely anyway, so we're just going to pop around with extra thins and things like that just to make sure they're all seated in. And it is the nice thing of doing things like these, because it all goes in. But when you see we've got these panels here, they just fit in. Now there's no actual location for these, you just sort of line them up with the fronts and rears, so we get this in. But a lot of this is all painted black, so hence whilst we're popping these in, we can drop all these in and spray it all in one. So what we're actually going to do, we're going to pop these panels all in, and then we can come along. So put a panel down here somewhere. We've got that, I'm sure, is a front. So we've actually one panel missed here, as always. That's the front panel. So already I've made a slight faux pas. So this one is going to go in just in here, like so. And we've got the two on the front, which are going to go in. So as I said, what we're going to do, we will spray all of this grey everywhere, then we can mask up and we can do the black areas in there as well. We just have to make sure these line up on the sides okay, like this, okay? And then obviously instrument panels and things like that we will literally do all afterwards. So what we can do for the moment, we can just stick this on here. We're hoping it should fit in. Should be leaning back. One side in, second side. And this one leans back as well, so when you go through, just make sure it's tapped back to put all that in. Okay, so we're just letting that dry just for the moment. Now, as I said, we're not going to put the sides on, because obviously we've got the panel sides which sort of come along in here and are going to fit in just like that. But obviously we need to get in there to paint, so those will go in absolutely afterwards. But another one we can do is just pop the handle in here, the little grab handle, which goes in up here. So we just get as much in there as possible. So when we kind of come round, obviously we're going to come around, we're going to weather this one, dry brushing, and as we go through. Okay, so now we can get some paint on. So we're just going to grab a little bit of protective top coat. So we've got just some kitchen towel down here. We've also put some of the parts onto little sticks just so we can hold them more easy. Now, instrument panels back in those days, when this first came out, night vision goggles were new, so what they used to do is paint the inside of the cockpit, instrument panels, everything completely black. Okay, so it's only the tub itself on the D which has this type of effect. So what we're going to do is just pouring it neat into the colour cup. Okay, now this is H317, which is dark gold grey. So hopefully we get it to come out here. It's a little bit thick, to say the least, so we're just going to thin it just a little bit. So we're just going to grab some acrylic thinners just into there like that. And we're just going to grab our faithful brush, a bit of a mix. Can't find it, there we go. So we just add a bit of a mix up in the colour cup. Now obviously it's still thick down the business end of the nozzle, so I have to wait for it to come through a little bit. So just switch that out. It was a bit like glue, it's a very old pot, as you can see here. It's quite a yucky thick one. And when it gets like that, it does tend to get quite thick. So we can use that to our advantage, because we'll just start to spray this on everywhere down here, the primer, the thicker stuff before the thin stuff comes through. There it is, coming through now. So what we can do, we're just making sure we come in from all the angles, cockpit sides, and everywhere. Make sure it's got a good coat, if we're going to mask this. So if we mask it and it's not very thick, it might just peel it off. So just make sure you come in from the top, that's all the areas in just like that. Okay, then we're going to do the same for these side panels as well. Let's say some of them are black, but the majority of it is going to be the lighter colour. Again, from all the angles. Now this won't take too long to dry. It's going to give it about half an hour so we can mask over it and put the instrument panels all in and everything else. But the front cockpit is all black, as we were saying. Okay, now the other thing as well, there's decals that go on which come with the kit, which can go on there, which is to liven it up, which is quite handy, because say normally I like to use colour photo etch sets, things like that, to do instrument panels, but as I say, they're not available at the time of doing this. So what we can do is step in and do it. I'll get these bits cleaned up and then we can get on. Okay, so this has been drying now for about half an hour, so we'll just move these out of the way. So what we can do now, there's two ways you could do this. Obviously you come along and you can just paint it by hand, just pick out the areas and go around it, a bit of dry brushing, a little bit of weathering over the top, and then obviously you've got those decals that are going to go on afterwards. Jobs are good. And the other way of doing it, of course, and this isn't the normal way I do this, is grab yourself some masking tape, some thin Tamiya tape type things here. And what we can do, we can actually mask up the areas where we want to spray them. So you can actually go along and run the tape just down in there like this. And we can run it up here. Okay. And then go around the entire model inside to do the paintwork, so to speak. But the trouble with all this is, it does take a long time to go around and masking up and everything else like that. So what I tend to do is a bit of a mix of both. So we'll just do the front airbrushing and then I'll show you how I do the rear part. So just for speed now, we're just going to grab our slightly lighter stuff. Just one tiny bit more so we don't get the actual overspray. All in like this. Then what you can do, you can take some normal flat black, bit of a mix here, and we'll just grab a piece just to protect our surface. Then we're going to spray this neat. The importance of spraying it neat is it stops it from actually leaking underneath things, because the paintwork's quite thick, so it takes a lot of air to atomise it so it's drying as it goes down and everything else like that. So if we sort of do it towards you, so we'll just check our spray. Okay, well, all we do just come along like that, put that back in its holder, and then you can manoeuvre these all out of the way. And it leaves you with that area done quite nicely and all the rest of it. But as I said, it does take a while doing it like that. So I would say take yourself a good quality brush
Okay, we can just do this touching. So we've got the cap here. Then all we're going to do is like here, we can just touch this in where it's gone round. I'm just going to let the brush do the work. So let the brush carry the paint. Okay, as you go round everywhere. All around like that. Okay, I'll show you on the other side as well. So what we're doing, we're coming in, place the brush and then drag the paint. Because it's acrylic, it's not very good for hand painting like this. But what it is good at is actually for dry brushing and airbrushing and things like that. It comes into its own. But here, because it dries so quickly, it does tend to give you a bit of a problem when you hand paint it. To get round that, you just sort of flood the area and drag the paint round like this, covering all your switches and dials and things like that as you go. So you've got some nice paint going in now and everything else. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to carry this on and just paint all of these areas. And at the same time, because I've got the black available in the airbrush, I'm actually going to spray the top part of the actual instrument panel, and also we're going to spray the instrument panels themselves flat black all over insides of these, things like that, just so it's all taken care of. And that way we'll still go around and we'll pick out obviously all the black areas on here, but this black part. But have a look at the instructions or your references and you'll see all the areas that are black, and to be honest there's quite a lot of it inside here. Okay, so that's all looking pretty good there, as you can see, really what we're after. So what we're going to do now is try and break it up a little bit, especially when you're with these larger scales. What you need to do is just sort of change the tone, because they are big areas. So what we've got here is some German grey XF-53. Just use a flat brush. And what we're going to do is just grab a piece of kitchen roll here. Okay, just loading up the brush, let it soak in. Okay. And then just give it a good old brush down. Okay, reload again and then get it all off. Okay, then what we're going to do is just gently going to go round everywhere on here. So we're going to do the back areas, as you can imagine, and we'll work our way round everywhere. So we're just starting back to front. Okay, because it's quite wet, the brush, i.e. it's got some on, we're just taking it pretty easy. So we're just lightly flicking this over everywhere, and all we're trying to do is just literally change the way you look at it. So it's, instead of it looking flat black, is now when we look at it, it looks a little bit more realistic, and we're not just keeping to the areas, we're really going everywhere, just trying to sort of liven all this up. Okay, especially over those circuit breakers on the back and all those areas like that. And you can see there on the close-up, and if we really bring that in a bit closer, hopefully you can see that we have got a very nice sort of rubbery black look to it, rather than being dead flat, something like that. Then obviously if we take the brush and we just work our way around these back areas as well, because we've hardly got anything on here, it's going to take its time to all come through. You can really give it some quite major rub. Okay, just be careful you don't overdo it, otherwise you're going to end up going through everything. But round the back here like that, as you can see, you change that area. Instead of it looking just normal black and everything else, we've already converted it with just two simple things: a little bit of black paint, a little bit of grey paint, dry brushing, and we've just weathered it in. When you compare it to the front, which is unweathered, and the back now. So all we're trying to do is just trying to create an illusion, if you like. So when you're looking at it, instead of it looking like lumps of plastic and everything else like that, it's actually looking like a real piece that's been worn down, i.e. bleached by the sun, marked, crude, you know, rubbed over, anything you like. So we're just going to pop round the rest of the cockpit areas all like this. But the thing, when you look at it like that, you really can see the difference between the two. So we'll do the same on the front. So we're just going to reload up the brush onto here. Just let it soak out the brush. When you put your brush down like this, just soak it down, place it on, let it soak down. 90% of it all off of it, just like that. Just bring the camera out a little bit. Okay, then we're obviously going to do these areas down the front here. We've got all these marks down here, so we'll start on those because there's going to be quite a grubby area. Okay, then we're just going to flick our way around all over the instruments, because all we're trying to do is make it look like it's worn, as in been used, rubbed over. So all you're trying to do is create in scale what happens in real life. So from this point of view, we just want to look like it gets rubbed every day, and a bit greasy and a bit oily, and perhaps damp crew members getting on and off, in and out of the way, things like that. Okay, and that's it. Really straightforward, very, very simple. Same thing again, we're going to do over these side panels. These, to be honest, when you look at the references, they obviously stick stow gear in there. Okay, so this very, very light over. And what we'll probably do, to be honest, we'll come round and we'll pop some little areas in here as they do. Okay, I've got a few little ideas for that. But at the moment we're just trying to give it a bit of a dirty up. To be honest, just weather it down. As I say, it's nothing worse when you see large scale models which just haven't been touched or toned in or weathered in and things like that, because otherwise they do look bad. Okay, same thing again. Obviously we're going to be doing the rear part of this shelf area, which is the part that goes on the back of the instrument panel up here. Okay, so all we're going to do is focus around the front bit, and we're just trying to take off some edges. Okay, give it some wear. So by wearing, we're literally just going to keep on brushing at it, just to make it look like it's been scuffed a little, especially over the handle. Okay, and then again right the way over the entire instruments. So take your time, don't try and get in there too soon, too quick, because otherwise what's going to happen is you are literally just going to come along and then either do what I've slightly done here, is take the paint off, or you're going to overdo it. And if you overdo it, it means you have to start again and go back with the black and everything else. So it's better just to get in there very lightly. But with this way, we can get in and we can turn around these instruments and make them look like they've been used. So there we go, that's that one. So last of all, we've got, well, second to last, got the instrument panel, the front one. But a lot of people often say to me about dry brushing detail, surface detail with, like, you know, the colour to do it, using silvers and stuff like that. I'm a great believer in using grey, because I find grey is a real nice colour to work with, because it's quite forgiving as well, as in if you do go wrong, then obviously you can come back and just recoat it and things like that. And by the time we've got some colour on here and all the things that are going to go with it, hopefully it will really bring this all together. So the last thing I've got to do is the instrument housing cover. So you could airbrush this, but to be honest, I want to give it quite a dusty look. When you look down at these, they often look quite sort of worn down, dusty. Obviously you get bleached because they're at the front of the aircraft like this. Okay, and there we go, something like that. So I think by the time we've got it all plumbed in together and looking the part, it really should look nice. So next thing you can do, if you wanted to, you could give this a wash. Now by a wash, you could easily just do a light oil wash, something like that to go in there. Indian ink wash, like sometimes I do things like that. I'm not going to do that with this one, to be honest. What I'm going to do now is literally just get some colour in here for some of the instruments. I've got the references, I'm going to go through them and pick out with a cocktail stick all the little switches and the gears and things like that. Because obviously reality is they're usually steel switches. The easiest way to do that is just to take some of your a dullish silver. To be honest here, I've got a little bit of gunbolt bit metal. Okay, and use a cocktail stick. So we just get a little bit on a cocktail stick like this, Okay, and then all you want to do is just run your cocktail stick over the top of the switches. Okay, and that will make them stand out very nicely, giving you that nice metal look. And because you've got it on a little stick like this, as you can see, you don't have the trouble of it having it on a brush and things like that. There we go. It's just all these little tiny techniques we tend to do just to break it up and make it look just a little bit worn. Okay. So perhaps you don't want to do every single switch down in here. Okay, those. Okay, just undo these. But if you lightly run your cocktail stick over the top, you should get a very nice area. But there we go. That's our worn down cockpit. Just like that. Really simple, really straightforward.